Right now, there's a teacher strike in West Virginia that covers 680 public schools that employ 19,488 classroom teachers in 55 different counties. Now, this strike is partially about the pay, which in 2016, the average salary for West Virginia teachers was 48th in the country. And West Virginia is one of only 5 states where the average pay actually dropped last year. But the strike is not just about pay. So here's more about this from Vox. The strike began on Thursday, February 22nd, the day after Governor Justice, a Republican, signed legislation providing teachers, school service personnel, and state police with a 2% salary increase starting in July and scheduling a 1% pay hike for teachers in 2020 and 2021. Teachers unions said their raises wouldn't cover cost of living increases, and the bill didn't address other concerns related to public employee insurance programs, healthcare costs, and payroll tax deduction options. Now, clearly I stand with the teachers here, but that's not what I want to discuss today. What I want to talk about is the neoliberal idea that if more people just voted for Democrats, then all these problems would be solved. And that was an idea that was echoed by MSNBC host Joyanne Reid, who tweeted out this: "Meanwhile, teachers in West Virginia are on strike for better pay and health care. If they start voting for politicians who actually support those things, look out GOP." And based on Joy Reid's history of propping up neoliberal ideas and politicians, I know she's not talking about voting more for progressives. She's just talking about voting more for Democrats. And if Joy Reid did an ounce of research, she would have recognized that West Virginia does vote for Democrats. So the last Republican governor that was voted in was in the year 2000 in West Virginia. And the state Democrats controlled both houses of West Virginia for 81 years, since 1933, until Republicans flipped it in 2015. So the Democratic Party in West Virginia had control for years, and the situation didn't really improve. And now it's gotten to the point where teachers feel like they need to strike before things get any worse. Now, let's go to the current West Virginia governor, Jim Justice, who was a Blue Dog Democrat, and I'll get to more on that in a minute. But here's how Jim Justice ran for governor.
We look at education completely the wrong way. It can be a giant economic driver to change the perception of our state and explode the potential for good jobs.
Jim Justice values teachers and will change education for the better. That's why the American Federation of Teachers supports Jim Justice.
The West Virginia Education Association endorses Jim Justice because he's committed to improving our schools as well as adult education.
No wonder all these groups endorse Justice for governor.
So Jim Justice ran for governor pretending to support teachers, and even got support from organizations like the West Virginia Education Association. But it gets even crazier. So this from socialistworker.org. In fact, as Michael Mokadine, a teacher and member of the West Virginia Education Association, pointed out in an article for socialistworker.org last summer, when the union supported Jim Justice's campaign for governor in 2016, Justice was the nominee of the Democratic Party, having changed party affiliation 3 months before he filed. Justice then switched back to the Republicans last August. What's more, the WVEA endorsed Justice in the Democratic primary, quote, against Jeff Kessler, a state senator and supporter of Bernie Sanders, Mokadine wrote. To at least some members, the WVEA seemed to be becoming nothing more than a rubber stamp for Blue Dog Democrats. Okay, so let's briefly go over that again. Jim Justice was endorsed by the West Virginia Education Association, or the WVEA, in his 2016 run for governor. Despite that, 3 months earlier, Justice was a Republican and then changed to being a Democrat so he could run as a Democrat in that election. And the WVEA endorsed him over Jeff Kessler, who was a state senator and supporter of Bernie Sanders. And the writer of that piece I just showed you, who is a part of the WVEA, he's a supporter of Bernie Sanders and progressive policy, but he doesn't head the organization. So this is something that we see a lot in even the last election in 2016. A lot of these so-called progressive organizations, the heads of these organizations are a part of the establishment. and they support, they toe the party line in terms of the Democratic Party. But the workers under these organizations, like this writer here, support progressives like Bernie Sanders, but they don't get a say. The heads of the organizations choose who that organization will endorse. And they chose Jim Justice, a guy who was a Republican up until 3 months before the election. So that should have gave them some indication, because after Justice won the election as a Democrat, he flipped back to being a Republican just months later. So this shows you that even when people vote for Democrats in West Virginia, it doesn't really change much, because the workers, like this writer here, who are a supporter of progressives like Bernie Sanders, don't really get to choose who actually gets to run in the race. It's the heads of these organizations who prop certain individuals up, like Jim Justice, and they prop up people who are corporate Democrats or blue dog Democrats, people who are essentially conservatives in the Democratic Party. Now, this is why it's so clear that progressives can win in states like West Virginia. And I have proof of that. So when offered a different kind of Democrat, Bernie Sanders, Clinton lost every county in West Virginia in 2016 to Bernie Sanders. But because the Democratic establishment has abandoned organized labor and put their thumb on the scale against Bernie Sanders in the 2016 election, they lost their opportunity to win West Virginia. Now, I haven't even mentioned Democratic Senator Joe Manchin. So Joe Manchin is a senator of West Virginia, and he often sides, even though he's a Democrat, he often sides with the Republican Party. And he does it so much to the point that he's asked fellow Democratic senators to sign a pledge to promise they won't run against him. Now, that pledge largely exists because he's afraid of Paula Jean Swearengin, who is running in the primary against Joe Manchin this year. So look up Paula Jean if you want an alternative to a conservative Democrat like Joe Manchin. Paula Jean doesn't take any corporate money. She is a progressive. She is a fighter for the people, for unions, and for policies that will actually make a difference and help the workers of West Virginia. Now, all of this shows you that despite voting for Democrats in West Virginia, its teachers have still gotten screwed. So it's not just about voting for Democrats over Republicans. It's about primaries and supporting candidates before they even get to the main election, supporting candidates that are actually progressive on the issues and aren't bought by corporate donors or big money. Now, I want to get back to, or end on, a response to Joy Reid's tweet. So I was looking through the responses to Joy Reid's tone-deaf tweet, her neoliberal tweet about just voting for Democrats is the solution. And I saw this series of replies, and I think it's great. So I just want to share this. Unfortunately, austerity and screwing public employees is a bipartisan project in states like West Virginia. Just electing Democrats isn't nearly enough. These teachers are carrying out a brave, illegal direct action. So spare us this smug centrism, eh? I'm prickly about this because I was part of the Wisconsin uprising in 2011. We forced a recall election, and the Wisconsin Dems wouldn't even pledge to repeal Walker's anti-union law. And National Dems did nothing. We don't owe them. They owe us. And that's the thing. If you redirect every struggle for human rights, workers' rights, economic justice, etc. into electing the same old Democrats, as folks like Joanne Reid tell us, you'll get nowhere. We've got to both transform the party and build institutions outside of it. So I saw those series of tweets, and I agree completely. The Democratic Party needs to be reformed so that it actually turns into a party that represents the best interests of the people. And with the help of outside groups, including unions, movements, and third parties, they can apply the pressure needed to change the system. Hey, if you like this video, hit that subscribe button below and consider throwing me a few bucks on Patreon at patreon.com/therationalnational or therationalnational.com/join.